Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And here we go. It's been a while. It's good to be back in my own body, you know? Absolutely been a while. I couldn't feel happier. Heart, heart, heart. Yeah. I think that's a mosquito. Probably fine, right? They do enjoy my blood just a little bit, but that's okay. Yeah, I don't care if they enjoy my blood. If they want my blood, they can have it. Probably delicious. I think my Switch might be a little bit higher than usual. I was recording videos for my Switch. Yeah, there we go. That's probably better, right? Yeah, I think that might be a little bit better. In fact, let's turn that down even more. There we go. Oops. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. I might sound a bit mumbly here at the beginning. It's necessary. I do apologize, but it is necessary. Yes, fantastic. We'll get through this, don't worry. That needs to be resized, and here we go. Hey there, hi there, Hyde here. It feels like it's been a while, doesn't it? Yeah, it feels like it's been a couple weeks, in fact. I know. In fact, it has been a couple weeks. Last week we did the whole id thing, right? Some of you might have been here for id, I don't remember. Some of you may not have been here for id. Some of you might not be here now. You know what? I might not even be here now. Isn't that fantastic to think about? Like, maybe I'm not here right now. Would you believe me if that were the case? I don't know. I think a lot of people probably would. Well, that's fine. We don't need to be here, right? In order to do this, all that needs to happen is that we're mostly here, right? And we're mostly here because my avatar is here. Now, I do apologize if the sizing looks a bit different, like for the gameplay. It's not optimally set up. I was playing a different Switch game, and it kind of ended up like this, you know? Perfect. You like that trick shot? Yeah, I'd been practicing. So last week we did the whole id thing. I was very happy to be able to debut id. Like, I know... Beautiful. I know id wasn't really, that important of a character for most people. No one likes a cult leader, right? Like, sure, they're supposed to have a lot of charisma. And charisma can be interesting. And I do like id's content, I just don't like id himself just yet. Oh, so close. So close. Did you see how close that was? Anyway, we did id last week, so you didn't see me. But here I am. Hopefully with better internet as well. Oh, right. Technically you did see me at the end of the id stream, but I was mostly talking about the id stream, right? Like my inspiration for id. And it's true, like, it is important in the sense that, it is a postmodern kind of perspective onto the classic question of human meaning and nihilism. I think it's very important. Oh, it's a tough shot, isn't it? I think it's very important that we discuss some of the elements of that, right? Like, finding meaning in your own life is a pretty tough thing sometimes. I know I've been there. And when you can't find any meaning out there, sometimes the best option is to make your own meaning in life. Yeah. And I've done that quite a bit too. Making your own meaning, depending on who you ask. Oh, so close. It's a process that we all have to come to eventually, I think. Others might disagree. Others might say that there are natural-born followers, and these followers don't actually have to think for themselves or do for themselves. Oh, you know what? My microphone's a little out of place, isn't it? Here, hold on a second. It's been a while since I've done this. Here we go. That's probably a little bit better, right? Let's move that over there. There we go. Yeah, that's a lot better. Excuse me for the scuff today. I have been, a little bit out of sorts, as it were. We're gonna continue talking about postmodernism, but I should mention that, as some of you may know, as one of you or two of you may know, I do make my own home brew, and today I had to rack my wine. Oh, that was bad. And I ended up with a good bit of excess that would not fit into my other glass carboys. Being the case, I ended up with quite the amount to drink for my nightcap. I don't usually drink that much, if at all. Like, I'm not a heavy drinker. It's never been the case that I've been a heavy drinker, and I do not advocate heavy drinking unless it is necessary. Sometimes it is. I've been in social situations like weddings, having to give best man speeches, and it is a toll on the nerves. I will never fault anyone who needs a drink to get through that. Best man speeches are especially terrifying in a way. Like, here's someone who has trusted you enough to end up asking you to give a speech at one of the most important days in their life. I don't know how that could not be stressful for someone. Like, what kind of social butterfly must you be to think, oh yeah, yeah, that's fine, you know? I don't know. But I am not that kind of social butterfly. And in fact, I am the opposite in most cases. It is always a shock to me when I'm asked to speak in public. For exactly that reason, I should not be asked to speak in public. Anyway, we were talking about postmodernism, weren't we? And the creation of meaning. That would be positive nihilism. I'm sure everybody's heard of the negative nihilism. How do we do this? Probably this. That was bad. Negative nihilism is the thought process that nothing actually has meaning in the universe. And it's not entirely wrong, if you think about it. Unless you believe that there are moral absolutes and perhaps higher dimensional beings giving you those moral absolutes, negative nihilism isn't necessarily wrong. It's just a matter of it not being entirely correct either. Rather, it's a matter of not recognizing the opportunities of the fact that there is no objective meaning. So I prefer to look at things from a positive nihilist perspective. Yes, it may be true that there are no objective meanings in this world, but at the same time, that also means that you are free to make your own subjective meanings, so long as you... we're so close. So very close. I should have put some spin on that ball. We are free to make our own subjective meanings in this world as we navigate our own experiences, correct? Yes. We are free. Ironically, that freedom also gives us the chains of responsibility. When we are free to do something, we are responsible for whatever we do. And I hate saying it, but inaction is also a choice, you know? Like, not doing anything is actually doing something, ironically enough. And we are responsible for that. What? Come on. I was robbed there. And that's kind of what id's about. Id is a postmodern perspective on meaning. No, that's bad. That's a bad shot. Yeah, it is a postmodern perspective on the subjective or intersubjective construction of meaning. And I know it's a bit strange that a parody of a cult could be something like, I don't know, a construct for the making of meaning intersubjectively. But it's true. Awful. It's true, though. You can make your own meaning on your own if you want to. I think Nietzsche would have preferred that, right? If you've ever read Nietzsche, he discusses the will to power and how that can breed the Übermensch. And however you feel about that kind of topic, Nietzsche himself did not actually advocate anything disadvantageous regarding Übermensch. He just meant that these people would be free to choose their own destinies. And also, I guess, constricted or restricted by their choices. I want you to think about the phrase, will to power. It's very self-explanatory. It's a very nice direct translation. I don't know the German for it. I don't know German at all. But will to power, it's very direct. It's a matter of taking something that you feel and bringing it into the world. Yeah. If you have a desire, it's about materializing that desire through your actions. Mind over matter is a similar concept, but will to power is more about the human element as opposed to the more, I don't know, physical nature of mind over matter. Yeah, something like that. So close. Yeah. And id, I want you to consider the name id for a second. If it wasn't obvious, we're talking Freud with id. Id is supposed to be... Okay, let me take a step back here. And let me put this down. Id is one of the three Freudian concepts for the psyche, right? You've got the id, the ego, and the superego. and it is kind of the baser, more vulgar of the three. It's the subconscious mind and all of the desires in it. And the ego is sort of like what you are generally. And the superego is how the ego perceives itself and the best it can think of. You love how my PNG moves? Thank you. It's a very basic movement on ViatoTube. We are talking Freud. Storm, you have some very interesting videos on your channel. I don't know how you found me, but I'm glad you did, because I was very happy to watch through them. OMG voice. I don't know how. It's very simple. ViatoTube is free online, and all you have to do is mess around with the presets. There are different movement options. Glad you found me too. Thank you. Thank you. I really like your artwork. Like the brush strokes in your painted style. Fantastic. I have a bunch of creepy art-like drawings, or paintings, oil paintings, on my walls in my own house. So your style really does resonate with me. I'm very happy to see it. When you found me, like, I noticed that you put out a video that day. I didn't quite understand it as well as I did the one about devouring, I think. But I did look through them, and I enjoyed them all. Like, the editing is just superb. Thank you, thank you. I'm glad if you like my videos too. It's always nice to be able to see small content creators and see their vision. Just like with Nietzsche, their vision brought to life through their will to power. Yeah, that's how I see things. That's mostly why I focus on indie content here on this channel. I do like going through the world of small teams of individuals, seeing how they actually imagine things, and getting the purest experience that I can from it. You don't get that with AAA games, you know? You get a bunch of bureaucrats interfering with things. A dark aesthetic? I don't know about a dark aesthetic. I am Edward Hyde, after all. It's not exactly pure. Mostly what I like to do is examine the kind of deeper intricacies of the indie game, but I don't really always portray that. I don't know if that's dark. I do focus on horror. But I don't know if that's really dark. Where's Jekyll VTuber? Jekyll's right here, you know? Yeah. I don't know if you've watched any of the Jekyll videos, but Jekyll's right here. And I'll tell you what. I've never been anywhere else. That's right. I've never been anywhere else. Everybody likes Jekyll, you know? And I don't blame you. No one likes the Red Oaf. He's kind of the ego of the group. That's what we were getting into just a while ago. Id is kind of like the id of the group. Ed is the ego. E for ego. And me, I'm the superego. I'm how I perceive myself. Which is a fascinating topic if you think about it. Yeah. Have you ever considered how you consider yourself? It's not an easy thing to consider, is it? Probably not. But it's okay. It's not that hard, really, to imagine that the way you imagine yourself is not actually how others perceive you. And it's not actually how you are either. Ah, yes. Freud and uni. I imagine that you had some kind of course in psychology or sociology then. Fantastic material. Freud being the father of psychoanalysis. analytics, as it were. Yes. Uh, we've come a long way since then, haven't we? But I think that some of those models still hold up, even if they're not exactly right. And even if you prefer Jungian theory, Carl Jung, as it were, I still think Freud, minus his complexes, I think he was hung up on those quite a bit. It still holds up as a wonderful way to examine or model how the mind works, right? Like, it's very simple to say, in hindsight, because we know this, the way you perceive yourself is not how others perceive you. And the way others perceive you isn't exactly what you desire. You don't really have to call it an id, an ego, and a superego. You just have to recognize that perhaps there are differences in perceptions and presentations, right? The superego, it doesn't have to be much more than your own faulty perception of the self. It doesn't have to be anything bigger than that. You just have to realize that, yeah, you are not what you believe yourself to be. And you also aren't what others believe you to be. And you also aren't what you're not. Postmodernism in a nutshell. I can't remember who it was, but one of the postmodernist philosophers said, "I'm not who I am, I'm what I could be." Which is a fascinating way of looking at it, isn't it? Dream interpretation? Sure. I don't really know too much about dream interpretation. I've looked into it. I don't really buy into it, though. I think dreams are a little bit too scattered for that, you know? I do think, I think there are multiple kinds of dreams, and not all of them really can be interpreted in the same standardized process. I think some dreams are just a mashup of whatever you experienced that day, right? Like, I'm sure you've had a dream like that, where you've gone to uni, so let's use that as an example, right? In university, I'm sure you had a dream about missing homework due dates or having a test that you haven't prepared for. Something like that. I think those are largely just experiences that your subconscious is concerned about. Oh. I have no idea what that means either. uh, Worst nightmares? Yeah. Yeah, I don't really know if all dreams have meaning, right? Like, I think some of them might just be matters of mashups. But, those dreams about, like, tests or homework not being able to be handed in, they're fairly common. And they're typically, expressions of worry that the subconscious is thinking about while the conscious mind is doing something else entirely. I do think that there are meaningful dreams. You can't have a connection to your subconscious without also having a tie to meaning, in the sense that you're looking at something that's worrying you. But at the same time, I don't know if every dream can be analyzed that way. Sometimes, like, you eat an ice cream cone, and then you're in an ice cream parlor in your dream, and you're like, why am I here? And there's no deeper meaning than the association with ice cream. Now, here's a fascinating topic. I don't know if you've ever looked into it, but if you have, there's something called state-based memory. And state-based memory, forgive me if I'm explaining something you know, is all about saying that your state of mind affects what you can remember at any given time. So when you're drunk, for example, you'll be able to remember other times when you were drunk, because there's that association of the state with the memories you already formed. Yes? So, if you're worried, it stands to reason that if you're worried about something like a test, then you should also have a state-based memory for worry. And those associations ought to be played inside of your mind while you're dreaming as well, I think. It makes sense. I'm glad if it does. I'm glad if I'm not just spouting incomprehensible nonsense here. Sometimes I feel like I am, you know? I know that I'm not... I know that I'm not thinking nonsense, but sometimes I do feel like I am spouting nonsense that is incomprehensible. But yeah, state-based memories are a well-known phenomenon, typically studied with drunkenness and other, like, psychological, psychedelic drugs kind of things. The drink of the night is tea, by the way. We've got a lovely loose leaf tea. You want to hear more of my thoughts, but I don't know if you're getting smarter hearing my thoughts. I am just Edward Hyde. Whatever I say about the human mind, take it with a grain of salt. I studied rocks, not people. There is a difference. This is a tough shot. Tea lovers rise? I'm glad if you're happy about the tea, but I do have to admit that I'm a coffee drinker. 9 out of 10 times I will go for coffee. Yeah, sorry. Like, I had to drink a lot of coffee when I was in university myself. Yeah. There's just no way to get through some of it without the caffeine, right? Cancelled? Oh. I am so sorry if I have offended you with my sensibilities here. Yeah. But if you like my thoughts, then I'm glad to be able to offer them. I do these streams once a week, just to give my thoughts and allow people to interact with me. Like, most of the time, like you, I'm making videos. And here's a quick shout out. Storm here in chat makes some very interesting videos. Yes. There is an indie game creator that I like from over on itch.io called Yames. And Yames made such games as Discover Your Body and, what was it called? Water Womb World, for example. And Storm here makes content very reminiscent of that kind of quality. Yes. I highly recommend the videos. They're very interesting. Very... I don't know. I don't think dark's the right word either. Like, maybe you think you're dark, I don't know. I think they're interesting. They're introspective, and they're a little bit gross in the sense that, well, not in the sense that they gross me out, but that they mess with proportions, right? Like, you've definitely messed with proportions. I remember seeing one of your videos where it was, clay, right? Like clay keychain type things. No. You don't have to thank me. I do like checking out the kinds of content of people who watch my content as well. Yeah. Anyway, it's very interesting. And the effects, the editing, also very interesting. The glitchy style is something I'm particularly fond of. Yes. Messing with perception is a very interesting way of going about things, isn't it? Like, in a way, if you mess with the perception of what's ever on the screen, you're messing with the state of the person as well. It's another one of those tools to create associations, right? Like, if you think about it, a glitchy video is creepy because it is different from what might be expected. I'm your goals? I'm happy if you think so, but I'd rather you find your own goals that are independent of me. You know what I mean? Like, I'd rather see what you can be, as opposed to you saying that I'm what you want to be. Yeah. I think that's much better. Oh, that's a much better way of looking at it. That you could be what you wanted to be, as opposed to what I am. Like, I once watched a documentary about a CIA negotiator, or maybe it was FBI. One of those alphabet agencies. And he said something like, never get so concerned about the deal that you want that you miss out on making better deals, right? There's a lot of wisdom there. If you get concerned about what you want to be, you might miss out on being what you could be. And what you could be might be better than what you wanted to be. Fair? I'm glad if that makes sense too. Yeah. I'm just an old man spouting nonsense for an hour per week. But these streams are basically that. The Zatsudan streams are all about me spouting nonsense and interacting with you people in my community. Some weeks it's more active than others. Last week we were doing a sermon. Yeah, I introduced a new character called Id. I don't remember where he... Nope, that's Cat Hyde. Here's Id. Id's fantastic. He's a cult leader. Ignore the cat. You can't have an anime character and not be a cat, right? Yeah. Yeah, that's like one of the rules. But, most weeks we do Zatsudan and chill games like this one, Side Pocket. I played this a lot in my youth, so I can play it without actually worrying about not talking. But these streams, these weekly streams, I only do one a week. They're all about interacting with anyone who might want to interact with me live. Otherwise, most of my content is videos. And I do prefer making videos over streaming, generally. Just because there are different opportunities, aren't there? Like, you make videos, right? So you understand the opportunities inherent to making videos. I'm sure you do. The glitchiness is one of those opportunities that you couldn't do... Okay. If you really tried, I bet you could make a glitchy live stream. I've seen some VTubers who have, and it's rather interesting when their models start to glitch out. It's very fascinating how they manage it. But, I think there are fewer options, in a way. Yeah. If you want to make a horror kind of live stream, it really requires a lot of forethought. And, when you're talking about horror videos, you can really get them just right. You can plan exactly what you need to plan. Like, one of the biggest things with horror is actually sound, right? And I think you excel at sound. The sound has to be right. It has to create tension. It has to be a little bit gross in some cases. Ah, yes, yes. That'd be a fantastic horror live stream. Your essay is due in 1 hour. And it would just slowly count down. I could see that. That would be peak horror. I think a lot of college students, or even high school students, would feel the same way. Your essay is due in 10 minutes. And just so on and so on. Yeah, absolutely, that would be horror. It would depend on how you presented it, but I do think it would be viable. Why you get a C-? Oh. I don't know if you're stepping into some kind of roleplay scenario there. Maybe it's some kind of BFE scenario, or not BFE, but like a teacher roleplay scenario, where your teacher is very strict. Although that does remind me, a lot of people get the bad, or get the idea that C's are inherently bad. When I was in university, C's were like the standard grade. People who got C's did the bare minimum, and that was about it. Yes, TFE. That is a genre that we will not be discussing here on this channel. Yeah. When I was in university, C was explained to me, by my older professors at least, to be the bare minimum of what was expected for some kind of test or assignment. And anything above the bare minimum would either get a B or an A. And they lamented the fact that there was such a thing as grade inflation. Sounds pretty bad, right? Like, usually when you're talking about inflation, it's economics, isn't it? And you talk like millions and millions of dollars not even being able to buy you a loaf of bread. That's bad inflation. And the same thing is apparently happening in US institutions of higher learning. I did not know that at the time, but that seems to be the case. So they were lamenting the fact that people were very concerned when the bare minimum did not get you an A. And I get that. Like, I really do. The expectations were different between the students and the teachers, right? Like, you have these teachers who are thinking, okay, if you do the bare minimum, you get a C. That's the middle grade. So, oh yeah, that's the bare minimum. And then you have these students who are thinking, I did what I was asked to do, and I got a C instead of an A. It's fascinating, right? Think about these differences in expectations and how they interplay within this kind of relationship between students and teachers. Because it doesn't have to be that way. If you're working on the same metrics with the same core understandings at the beginning, then everything runs a lot smoother. Yeah. People know if they want an A, they'll put in the extra effort, not just do the bare minimum. They can exceed the bare minimum. That's how I was taught to do it, at least. Unfortunately, it isn't just the students who are at fault here. Like, this is a paradigm shift, and paradigm shifts are institutional and generational. It isn't just one generation that has a problem in a paradigm shift. It's that 2 generations during a paradigm shift, there's got to be a changeover between the old guard and the new guard for a paradigm shift, right? Unfortunately, they don't always see eye to eye. And the best way to see eye to eye is to be very upfront about expectations, to communicate that first and foremost. That's why a lot of professors and teachers these days have rubrics, right? If they give you a rubric, they understand the importance of actually telling you what their expectations are. Whether or not they live up to the rubric is a completely different issue than whether or not they have a rubric. If they have a rubric, they're at least trying to give you the kind of information that you need to see eye to eye, to know what you would be expected to do. Like, I had one professor for a science fiction course. Yeah. It was a course dedicated to analyzing science fiction as written in the classics and the modern science fiction. Very interesting course, but the professor was a bit more old school. And he was very upfront about it. He said, I never give A's in my course. I don't expect you to have an A. If you expect to have an A in this course, go ahead and drop out right now, while you're in the dropout and changing period. And I always preferred professors who gave you that kind of warning, because you knew right up front what to expect without having to worry, halfway through the course and I have a lower GPA or grade or whatever than I would expect to have, despite doing all the work that was asked of me. Yeah, it's like any other relationship, really. Whether it be a relationship between friends or lovers or even co-workers or colleagues. Like, relations always need that clear communication up front for expectations if things want to be gone, or if you want things to go smoothly, I think. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be that you have expectations either, right? Like, you can have no expectations as the expectation. As weird as it sounds, that can work quite viably in most circumstances. I wouldn't say it works very well in something like a career. Working relationships, probably not. Yeah, probably not. But that's okay too, right? Like, it really depends on the context of the relationship. High school always gave C's. Hated his students. Classroom was dark. I don't know if that's quite the same thing. He sounds like he was just very miserable with his job. Yeah. If he hated his students, he should not have been teaching. I think that is very different, because that's unreasonable, right? My examples were about reasonable expectations, and there were ways that you could get what you wanted, so long as you communicated with the person you wanted to talk to, and worked together with the same kind of expectations. That just sounds awful. Like, this person didn't actually want to be a teacher. Which, yeah, depending on where you're from, I know in America there are a lot of people who become teachers for the wrong reasons. It's kind of sad. I had several teachers like that myself. They saw that teachers had basically the summer off, and yet they had a similar pay for the amount of work towards most jobs that would require a bachelor's degree or whatever. Snape coded. Hey now, Snape was a good guy. Snape was fantastic. He was a good person. I want you to consider Snape as a character. Spoilers if you've never read all of the Harry Potter books or watched all of the Harry Potter movies. I've never watched all of the movies. I did not watch the Deathly Hallows, either one of them, but I did read all the books. Snape was a fantastic guy, and Harry's father was an absolute jerk. Snape, he was just in love with a girl, right? And he got bullied by the guy that she chose, and he took that out on the guy's son. But the guy's son was also kind of a jerk, to be fair. Like, Harry Potter was kind of a jerk. He kept doing things that he should not do, things that were unsafe, things which would get people into a lot of trouble if they would have been done by anyone but Harry Potter. So no, we will not be bad-mouthing Snape in my chat. You can call him a villain. I'll take that. But Snape was a good guy. He loved his students so much that he even killed Dumbledore for Draco. Yeah. To save Draco and give him a chance at redemption. Which Draco did actually do. Draco did redeem himself. If you remember, yeah, Draco did redeem himself. Yeah. I don't know. Like, I think, when I was a kid, Snape was definitely portrayed as a villain, right? Yeah. Snape was portrayed as a classic villain type. But the more you read into his character arc, the more you realize Snape was never a villain. Snape was just someone who was bullied as a kid. He was a victim. And in a way that gave him his own state-based memories, where anyone who associated, or anyone who was associated with the older Potter, Harry's father, ended up triggering those traumas. And he reacted poorly. I won't say he's not... What's the word here? He is responsible for his actions against Harry. But Harry didn't help things. Not at all. Yeah. Yeah. I do think that's fair. I have no idea what we were talking about before Snape. Oh, high school, right. Yeah. Like, I knew some teachers in high school who became teachers specifically for the fact that you get summer off and your pay is okay. I get it. I don't really agree with that. Like, I think you should be a teacher if you want to teach, but on the other hand, like, everybody's got to eat, so if that's your meal ticket, then I get it. It's not ideal. I wish you were teaching for the fact that you enjoyed teaching and that you wanted to help students learn something new, maybe shape young minds in a positive way, whatever that means. Don't you think that's kind of part of it too? Like, some people... I've talked about this a lot on my channel, but I enjoy the allegory of the cave, Plato's allegory of the cave, but I don't agree with it. The way I see it is very different from how classical people might have seen it. Classical peoples were more absolutists when it came to morality, and the same for the ancient Greeks in Plato's time. Most of them believed that there were objective goods and objective evils. So I guess I'm kind of being unfair about my interpretation of it, because I don't really believe that there are objective goods or objective evils. I think there are things that we could call as close to objective goods and objective evils as possible, but they're not objective. They're intersubjective, right? Inter meaning between, and subjective meaning individual. So between individuals, we can all agree that there are certain goods and evils that would almost universally be considered as such. But in the case of Plato's cave, if you question that there are absolutes, if you question the validity of absolute morality, absolute good, or absolute evil, then the entire allegory breaks down, and it stops being meaningful. I'll give you a quick rundown of the allegory of the cave, in case you've never experienced it. It's very interesting. I first experienced it in high school myself, and then again in college, because it is such an important work. So it goes something like this. Imagine that there is a cavern, and in the cavern there are people chained to face a certain direction, and there are fires lit behind these people, and there's a bridge, and people are walking past this, between the fire and the bridge behind these people, so that there are shadows cast upon the wall. And this is the reality that the people chained down know. They only know the reality of the shadows. Yes. Joked about it being Yeah, okay, I can see that. Because of the chains, right? Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. Or is it because of the Greeks? The ancient Greeks were not known to be too judgmental about such things. Fair enough. Yes. Yeah, a little bit. Well, it's acceptable, right? Like, if you think about it, the frontal cortex doesn't really... The frontal lobes don't fully develop until about 21 in males. So yeah, physically, a little bit, and thus mentally, definitely. It happens. I can't fault anyone for that. I think that's a bit of a stretch, though. Going from shadow puppets to that. Not my first thought process, but I won't fault anyone who thinks that way. Anyway, the premise here being that people who escape the cavern ought to go back in the cavern and rescue the people chained in there, and bring them to the surface kicking and screaming if necessary. And Plato called these people philosopher kings, right? Yeah. The ruling class. Those who had seen the light. And if you assume that there are absolute goods and absolute evils, absolute lights and absolute darks, then it makes perfect sense, right? But if you take that away, and you say there is no objective way to know that what you've seen is the sun, maybe it's just another brighter fire in a shallower cavern, or maybe it's even in a deeper cavern, right? Like, there's no way to objectively know that you've gone up. You might have gone down. Caverns are notoriously hard to navigate. They can be very difficult, right? You can get lost easily in them. So maybe what Plato thought of as a philosopher king who had seen the sun was actually just a person who ended up deeper in the cavern system, looking at a brighter fire. And instead of dragging people who were chained up into the brightness of the day, he just drug them deeper into the cavern. Yeah. So, I don't know. I think you do have to assume that there's some kind of moral absolute in order to have the idea that you can shape young minds. I don't like it. That's my entire point. I went on that entire tangent just to say, yeah, it's not really fair to say that you want to shape young minds, unless you admit to yourself that the way that you're shaping young minds isn't necessarily the best way to shape young minds. Like, if you're self-aware enough to say, yeah, I don't know if I know the absolute best way of doing things, but I'm gonna teach you what I've learned, and you can take from that whatever you will. I think those are the best kind of teachers. I will say that when I was younger, when I was in high school, one of my teachers denied one of the fundamental tenets of his field. Like, one of the theories of his field, he just absolutely denied. He did not believe it, and he would not accept it as the truth. This is one of those paradigm things. But he was fantastic with everything else regarding his field. Just that one fundamental thing he could not agree on. And that's fair. He acknowledged that, and he still taught the thing that he did not agree with. He also taught alternative ways of looking at things, but that's neither here nor there. He was self-aware of the thing, and he knew that he did not know any better. And I think that's probably the best way of doing things, if you do have some kind of teaching position. It's not necessarily humility. I'm not asking you to be humble if you are a teacher or professor. You don't have to be. You spent how many years studying your expertise. I'm not asking you to be humble for that. You worked hard. you deserve to be acknowledged for working hard. It's just basically you memorized models and you thought about models. Maybe you made some of your own. And that's fine. Some of them might be great, pragmatically speaking. They have predictive capabilities, and the predictive capabilities show out and bear fruits. That's great. But at the same time, it's very hard to verify or falsify any of those models as objective truths. I'd say impossible, in fact, but only a Sith deals in absolutes. And I'm no Sith. Yeah. It's possible, in fact. It's very possible that someone can experience objective reality objectively. It breaks down the meaning of words. This is one of the problems with the social construction of language, right? When you get outside of the confines of the human experience, you end up in this weird area where words break down. The entire meaning of the symbols breaks down. It's strange to think about, but every word that you know is tied inherently to one of your human experiences. A dog would not be able to have any of the meaning that you hold, even if it could process the words the same way. A dog would have no meaning of the word nose, for example, because it doesn't have a nose, it has a snout. It could, like, extrapolate from its snout what you mean by nose, but its own experiences are of a snout, not a nose. Yes. I hope that's clear. It's not an easy topic to talk about. This is another one of those postmodern symbolism kind of topics. Yeah. Symbolic logic, I believe it is? Or symbolic construction? One of those. It's been a while. It's been a while since I've talked about philosophy in any meaningful capacity. And especially postmodernism, even if I am using it as id. Anyway, I have no idea what we were talking about. Something about symbols breaking down once you get outside of human experiences. Right, paradigms. We were talking about paradigms again. I do like the topic of paradigms. I get stuck on them quite easily. I do apologize for that. They're just so fascinating, right? Like, everything you know has been intersubjectively agreed upon by multiple people. And there's no way that you can say with any objective truth, with any verifiability, with any falsifiability. There is a subtle difference between verifiability and falsifiability. Verifiability meaning that you can create evidence which corroborates with something that you would expect or observe, whereas falsifiability means that you can create evidence that suggests the opposite. Some things are verifiable, but not falsifiable, and some things are falsifiable, but not verifiable. I will not give examples because it gets very complicated from there, but I will tell you that those options do exist. And yeah, human logic breaks down after a while. If you ever get beyond the human experience, it breaks down completely. And there's nothing you can do about it. It's why I always say objective knowledge, even if we could have it, we'd have no way of using it. Yeah, we'd have no way to verify it, we'd have no way to falsify it, because everything would be dependent on our subjective experiences. It'd be like asking the question, what does a rose objectively smell like? It's impossible to answer that question. Objectively? What do you mean objectively smell? Smell is a perception, and perception is dependent, so far as we know, upon the individual subjective experience. A rose smells like a rose. A rose by any other name would smell as sweetly. Here's a fun fact for you. Apples are actually part of the rose family. Yeah, and I've always thought that rose hips smell a little bit like apples. I'm sure that other people would disagree with me. That goes to show that my subjective experience of what roses smell like is not necessarily what the intersubjective, let alone the objective, which goes beyond the agreed upon and goes into true and absolute, would be. Yeah. Fascinating to think about, right? I have no idea why we were talking about that topic. I couldn't tell you. Something about morality, absolute goods, absolute evils, I'm sure. Like, I've known a lot of teachers in my day, and there have always been some who have been better than others with their openness about their biases and what they believed. I think that's always for the best. Even Plato, as far as we know, Plato did not really preach so much as give. He offered things, thoughts, dialectics, and he made others think. It's very easy to break down something. It's very hard to give anything concrete in return, right? So much easier to break than to make. That's a common fact. Anyone with a sledgehammer can break down a foundation, but you give someone masonry tools, not everyone can build a solid foundation in its place, even if they give them the right tools, the right time. Some people just don't have the skills for that. And the same is true for anything, really. It doesn't have to be something as physical as building. It can be abstract, like teaching. Yeah. Fantastic, right? Anyway, I am about done with this. Our stream is going to be ending after I die here. I've been having a lot of fun talking about these topics. And we're gonna do the next, or we're gonna do the same thing next week. Oh, look at that, we got a 4-up. Never mind, we're gonna keep going. Yeah. I'll tell you another thing. A lot of people get preoccupied by perfection, right? But perfectionism isn't really the standard throughout the world. There are some parts or some cultures where perfectionism is not the goal. What is the goal is acceptance, right? There is a Japanese philosophy called wabi-sabi, and it's all about the transience, the imperfection, and, you know, the flaws of what are, right? Like, it's about accepting things as they are, as opposed to being unhappy about what they could be. And it's generally applied to such things as ceramics and artworks, pieces of art. But you could apply it to the self as well, I think. I don't know if it's traditionally applied to the self. It might not be, right? Like, here's one of the fun facts about things. There are cultural elements that you can assimilate into yourself, and it's still probably fine, right? Like, that is probably a controversial thing. But I think it's perfectly fine to assimilate cultural elements into your own life, even if they're from far away, or even if they don't really make sense. Like, you can make them idiosyncratically make sense in your own life, right? So if you want to apply wabi-sabi, to the transience of the human soul, the human self, if you will, or the imperfection of the human being, you absolutely could, right? All you have to do is accept that you are imperfect and that you are transient. And transient here does not mean like a hobo. Yeah, that is a different kind of transient, isn't it? But in a way that goes against everything that I was talking about when I was talking about interpreting Plato's allegory of the cave, correct? Like I told you, it doesn't make sense to analyze Plato's allegory of the cave outside of the context of the belief in moral absolutes, right? Absolutes from the gods. Some things need to be considered in their context in order to fully understand them. But I think that's just the surface level, right? Once you get past that, once you understand things from a surface level, I think you can, if you want to, assimilate them idiosyncratically into the self. Create paradigms for yourself using those elements, right? There's nothing wrong with extrapolating and taking things for yourself. I think that's the very heart of philosophy, right? Yeah. Philosophers don't want you to just believe whatever they say about philosophy. That's not the point of philosophy. Philosophy is about getting you to think about your life, right? It's about getting you to interpret things in your own way. Yeah. It's never been about just listening and believing and repeating things. No. Philosophy is about taking things, taking them further, extrapolating them, interpreting them as the selves, and building them into your own cognitive schemas. I find that a lot of people who teach philosophy, in my experience, they teach it from a historical standpoint, right? They teach philosophy as if this is what they said, and this is exactly what it means. This is the historical context of it. And in a sense, I agree that that is the first step of teaching any good philosophy. That you need to understand what was meant by the author during the contextual timeline and place, and basically the broader history of it, before you can then, and this is the part that no one ever does, use that however you want. If you think about it, that's the whole point of thinking about things. To be used pragmatically. Yeah. I had a lot of fun. I did say that we were going to be ending here. And we will be. We will be ending here. It was nice to see everyone. I had a few lurkers. Always do. Always nice to be here and be able to just interact with people who want to interact with me. But for now, I will see you all next time. I love you all. But Hyde, out.